welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com. What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every Friday by my main man, Derek Bell. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or anywhere you get your podcasts. And today we're diving into the Carolina Panthers. And the biggest question that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, the most important question that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, and a question that we thought was going to get answered today, and it did not. Who's playing quarterback for the Steelers? Mike Tomlin laid it all out there. We're not going to land the plane yet. The plane is not ready to land. Kenny Pickett is doubtful. He didn't say he's out, but he said he's doubtful. He emphasized that. And we'll move on from there. He said they'll make an announcement tomorrow. I mean, the weather's beautiful. It's awesome. Fantastic. I hope it's good over there. The real question I want to ask you today to start this one off, do you really think we're getting an announcement tomorrow that says who the Steelers' starting quarterback is on Sunday?
We might get an announcement tomorrow. I don't really know. I'm of the opinion that it really doesn't matter a whole ton to me. I know it's a good talking point, and there's differences between the two guys. We know Kenny's not playing, but and just in
we
terms
don't know.
of like,
it's doubtful. It's doubtful.
Nah,
not out. Doubtful.
He's
doubtful.
Not playing. But I mean, in terms of the other two, like, I mean, they're definitely different quarterbacks. But in terms of like winning this particular game, neither of them do very much for me in terms of moving the needle on if the Steelers are going to win or not. I mean, I think if the Steelers do win, it will be because of other factors, not relative to, the quarterbacks. Unless, Mitch goes out there and throws 3 picks and, a span of 5 or 6 drives again, then that could be obviously a big detriment. And I think my theory on why we're seeing Tomlin so kind of coy about the quarterback position is I think that he was just very upset that they lost that game last week because you can't turn the ball over 3 times, near the red zone and expect to win the football game. So I think that was, even if Mitch does end up starting on Sunday, I think this has been one of those like message type things of take care of the football or you're going to be on the bench again. So
I think that's the thing though. Like there's like 4 sides to this and you have to pick all of them, honestly. Like you have to start with why is Mitch in the court? Why is there competition if Mitch is there? Is it because of the 3 turnovers, which is, most likely what pushed it over the edge? But does the 1-3 start like justify any of this? Does the fact that Deontay Johnson's openly pushing for Mason Rudolph mean any of this? Like, has Mitch just kind of lost the locker room and the offense? And then on the other side, like, how many times can you do this to Mason Rudolph before you kind of feel like a dick and just like, all right, like, we've done this to you 4 times, twice within the last year, and signed you to a wasteful contract. But, maybe we're there. Do you think that there's any truth? So my thought all week long was obviously the 3 interceptions, but I think that Mike kind of sees that they are still alive. We know Mike Tomlin well enough to know that there is by no means any chance that he cares at all about 0.2% of a playoff opportunity. He sees that as we could still make the playoffs. Is he looking at this and just saying, okay, I don't know if Mitch is going to win us this game and we need to win this game, so maybe we should have gave it to Mason? Do you think that went through his mind at all?
I mean, I definitely think, he's going to try to win the game. I think like I said, I think it just might be one of those things where he wants to make sure that whoever's playing quarterback isn't going to lose the Steelers the game. Because that's the thing. Like when the Steelers won 3 out of 4 games heading into last week, it wasn't because like they were like Kenny was doing, just fantastic things in terms of putting a ton of points on the board and, they were throwing the ball all over the yard. He was just taking care of the football better. And like that led to them, being able to stay in games. Granted, the schedule got extremely soft on them, but at the same time, like that's what Tomlin wants to do. He wants, whoever's playing at quarterback, take care of the football and give them a chance. And, if you watch last week's game, Mitch did some good things in terms of like moving the football. Like they were pretty explosive on offense, between the 20s, Mitch did a lot of good things. It's just those last 2 interceptions were both interceptions that you cannot make as a 6-year vet. The deep ball to Deontay.
Oh
If you
my
want to take a
gosh.
shot, that's fine. But you get middle field closed. Anytime you get middle field closed, that free safety is the quarterback's responsibility. If you're a 6-year vet and you can't hold that guy in the middle of the field and he gets the interception, that's a bad look. Like, there are high school quarterbacks that are taught that's your responsibility. You can't do that. And then, even the other interception he threw over the middle of the field to Pat, like, first read, he never gets off of him, stares him down in the middle of the field. There's two, whole linebackers right there, just throws it anyway. So I think that those things, they drive coaches crazy. So it's one thing to be aggressive, but it's just how you're being aggressive or how you're making mistakes also matters. The process matters. And I thought that, Mitch's process when they got into scoring position last week was really bad. So I think terrible. That's the message.
Yeah. The message is certainly there. Obviously, what is the threshold here? What's the line? Is it one interception? You go out there, you throw one interception in the first quarter, you're getting benched.
It depends on how it is. Like, if he makes another
clearly his fault interception,
like a clearly his fault, and not him getting confused by coverage or like him throwing an inaccurate pass that sails over somebody's head and gets picked. I don't know that that's enough, but like similar interceptions to the last two we saw last week, then I think there will be a quick trigger because Tomlin wants to win the game. Obviously, he's head coach, going to try to win every week, regardless if the Steelers' playoff chances are effectively over anyway. But there's going to be, even if Mitch starts, I anticipate that this leash is not going to be what it was last week. Tomlin's not going to let him turn the ball over 3 times in enemy territory and just be like, all right, well, because Mason wasn't active last week. So that's another reason, like, you can't just
could have put Zach Gentry out there.
He didn't really have a choice but to roll with Mitch. And, that's just how the cookie crumbled. So
my fun fact about Zach Gentry is that I learned this week that he could throw a football farther than all 3 quarterbacks. So, I mean, the George Pickens factor is always there. Always there. You just need a guy to go back there and launch it up. I have a couple of thoughts here, but I do want to give this little nugget. This is my thought on how it's going to unfold. I think tomorrow we're going to get the news. It's going to be Mitch. They're going to make the announcement. They're going to shut down Kenny or whatever. And I get that because we talked to Najee today, and when somebody asked him if he knew who the starting quarterback was, he kind of just looked and he was like, "You don't know who the starting quarterback is?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, obviously I don't know." I can't tell you what happened in practice. I will say that, the analysis of a 50-50 split was pretty spot on all week long. It was very, very similar reps, 2 and 2. But I just feel like it's going to be Mitch. And you got to look on the other side of this. Like, I feel bad for Mason Rudolph, but going into this game, we and you just talked about this right before we got on here. It makes a lot of sense for it to be Mitch, especially when you look at Carolina's defense, which is where we should start here. Brian Burns, Mason Rudolph, not a good mix. Brian Burns, Mitch Trubisky, probably also not a good mix, but at least it adds a little bit of escape factor, I guess.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers plan to block Brian Burns because Burns has been on a heater, man. This has probably been the breakout season that kind of a lot of people, Burns has been a really good player since he got drafted, but it's probably him stepping into that elite kind of tier of pass rushers that a lot of people have really been waiting on just because of how talented he is. Pure speed rusher, like one of the best in the game, like 100%. I think he has 60 pressures. Go ahead.
Is he signed? Does he have a contract?
No, they're going to give him the bag. Because you think about it, the Rams offered Carolina 2 first-round picks for Burns, and they turned it down. So
they're giving him everything.
Was it 2 or 3? 2. It was definitely 2.
Either way.
Either way, a lot of draft capital for Brian Burns. So and they turned it down. So they're gonna pay him the bag. He's gonna get a huge amount of money. But yeah, Burns 60 pressures on the season, which leads the entire National Football League. 10 sacks, elite speed rusher, crazy get off. One of the bendiest guys in the entire league, honestly, in terms of like getting the corner. And then, similar to like the move that we see from Alex Highsmith, a deadly inside spin. And what makes Burns really unique is you won't see it. Like, you might not see it on Sunday, Burns is one of the only pass rushers in the league that actually has an outside spin to his repertoire. Like everyone, like a lot of the really good pass rushers are incorporating that inside spin as a counter. Burns will actually spin to the outside, which is kind of different. So he's a very difficult pass rusher to plan for. Carolina doesn't get a ton of pressure on the quarterback, which forces, like, they're the most blitz heavy team in the league, and that's because they only really have, which kind of makes what Burns does so impressive. He's their only pass rusher. Like, he's their only guy that really wins one-on-one. So, like, you really have to game plan for him. And that's part of the reason I think, too, that they move him around so much side to side. Like, he doesn't sit on one side, kind of like, TJ and Alex do.
So that's a no-go for Mason Rudolph. That was our consensus before this, is because Brian Burns is so dangerous and Mason Rudolph has ultimately zero pocket presence whatsoever. It's a disaster for whoever's back there, but at least Mitch offers some mobility. Especially, you line up Brian Burns on Dan Moore. And I think Dan Moore's got his positives. Speed and athleticism is not one of them whatsoever. So you put him against him, and that's a bad equation for the Pittsburgh Steelers and whoever's back there. You want a guy who can move and who could instinctively move. You want to look at the situation and say, okay, you shouldn't have to like game plan to be like, okay, you have to step up in the pocket. Your mind should immediately go, all right, I have to take off right here. Like that's
there needs to be a conscious effort too, because of the ways that Burns likes to win up the arc. You have to be very mindful about how deep you're getting in the pocket. And that's something that Burns is so good, man. Like, the way that he can corner at like that 7-8 yard mark is a scary, scary thing. And I watched him. There's a play against Denver 2 weeks ago that he had. Russ is only about 7.5 yards in the pocket, I think. And Burns is able to literally just win the arc. And then he tips the ball from behind, and it spirals up, and it's like a tip drill type thing where there's 15 Panthers. Somehow they didn't come down with the interception. I have no idea how, but he's just the type of player that can change the outcome of a game with like 2 or 3 different plays. So, he's definitely priority number one in terms of like what they'll be dealing with.
Oh yeah, 100%. Who else on Carolina's defense are you looking at? Who else have you watched film on this week that somewhat scares you for the Steelers?
I knew that J.C. Horn was having a good year, but I was watching the Seahawks-Panthers game live last week, and he was balling. He shadowed DK Metcalf for the most part last week, and he did more than hold his own. He had an interception on the first play of the game in zone coverage where he kind of baited Geno into throwing a corner route, and came and undercut that. And then later in the game, Metcalf was trying to run like an 8-yard speed out, and Horn just was in off coverage, click closed and undercut it, picked it off. But I think like he was like bobbling it going out of bounds, so they overturned it. But Horn's had an impressive season. Like, you guys have probably heard me talk about, if you follow me on Twitter, about how great Patrick Surtain's been this year, who I think has been probably the best corner in the league. Horn's honestly been right there. And if you look at numbers wise, he might have the edge. He actually leads the NFL right now in passer rating against, which is just unbelievable. And then he's also second in the NFL in terms of snaps per reception allowed. So he's been balling. He they will have him occasionally shadow the other team's best player. I don't know what that looks like.
I was going to say, who would they shadow this week? Is it going George or is it going Deontay?
I can't really tell, honestly. I was kind of looking at some of his graphs in terms of like where he's lining up week to week. Obviously Metcalf isn't really like most receivers. He's definitely more like Pickens than he is Deontay, but I don't know what they'll do. He lines up on both sides of the field. I'll have to do a little bit more research on that, but if they want to shadow, I would anticipate that it's probably going to be Horn that's doing that. But he also plays in the slot too. So like they move him around everywhere. He's a fantastic young player. Probably, right up there, like 1A, 1B with Surtain in terms of like young DBs in the entire NFL.
Are we going like a Mason Rudolph 1A, 1B, or a
legit one?
1A, 1B?
A true 1A, 1B with like actual good players. How about that?
I agree though. I think those two names have been the only two that I've really done any research on this week that I've gotten to spend a little extra time. I haven't watched a ton of film this week. I won't lie to you. I think this matchup is incredibly boring. And the fact that I didn't know who was playing quarterback kind of intrigued me more than how it would go. I also think it's going to be a very offensive, like who could win the time of possession type of game. If you could hold the ball longer than your opponent and get into the end zone, I think you win this football game. And because of that, names like Brian Burns and names like JC Horn are going to play huge roles in here. A couple of headlines that I would like to address to you before we do our True Classics ad read. Have you going to Carolina? Have you heard the nonsense? I got a text yesterday driving to the facility and said, "Did you hear the rumors? Do you believe the rumors?" That's what it said. And I said, "What? Of what?" Nearly crashed my car because I had to reply to this text immediately. Of what? And the text replied, Mike Tomlin to the Carolina Panthers. And I said, nope, I haven't. And no, I do not believe them. Have you heard that? I think it was Florio that came up with the situation on the Fan. And really a better question here. What would an actual head coaching trade for Mike Tomlin look like? If you were a team that could somehow pull it off, what are you offering up to get Mike Tomlin? How many picks?
I don't even know. Tomlin's going to be the Steelers head coach until he doesn't want to be anymore.
Yeah,
so
and
Tomlin,
no doubt.
If he wants out, like if he wants out, obviously you want to get value for him. What that value looks like, I don't know. I mean, who's the last head coach that has been traded?
I don't know any of them that have been traded. It's like Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers got traded in the NBA.
I'm trying to think of what that is.
The only time I remember head coaching trades is every time somebody shows up on a Tomlin Tuesday to ask a question like, Mike, have you heard the rumors about you and the Washington Commanders? Like, no, he hasn't. And he doesn't care. Or USC. But like, what would it take? Like, if you're the Panthers and you're like actually serious this offseason and the Steelers aren't going to say yes, but what are you tossing out there to make this, we got to land our guy offer? Multiple first round picks, multiple picks in general. You tossing a player out there? What do you give up for Mike Tomlin? What is the value here?
I don't know what the value of a head coach in terms of draft capital is. You can't
give up anything else, right? You can't. Yeah, what else are you going to offer?
I don't know.
We'll give you our interim.
I would need to see some type of more substantial evidence than just Florio. And this isn't me like bashing other professionals in the business, but there are just certain media members that in the national media that have a better or worse like handle on the Steelers like temperature, and Florio's not one of them. So I don't know if there is anyone who has a quote unquote good handle on the Steelers in the national media from what I've experienced the last 4 years. More like for all the nonsense I have to talk about with you on Fridays because of what the national media has said. So I agree. Now, Florio, and credit to Florio, it wasn't like it's going to happen. He was like, Tomlin to Carolina, I wouldn't be surprised. I think his other example was Bill Belichick. And I was like, I don't know who's a worse option to name here, who wouldn't have a job or who wouldn't be involved in this trade sooner. Second headline I'd like to talk about. I saw you tweet this out earlier, so I want to get your opinion on here. And there's actually comments out here. Brock Purdy, who's doing well right now. The guy, Mr. Irrelevant, is very, very relevant at the moment. I have seen at least a dozen tweets in the last 3-4 hours of the Steelers should have got Purdy over Kenny Pickett. They should have taken the guy who was picked last in the NFL draft over a first-round quarterback. I don't have a question. I want to know your thoughts. My overall thoughts is two things. One, this should effectively end the analytics community argument that Jimmy G is like a top 10 quarterback, because Kyle Shanahan could go get Noah out of his apartment right now and turn him into a league average to above league average starting quarterback in the National Football League.
Easy. Easy.
My main take is that there probably are maybe, and I mean maybe, three quarterbacks or three head coaches, excuse me, that are more valuable than Kyle Shanahan is right now moving forward. I think if we did a fantasy draft of head coaches, I think Shanahan would go top three, and it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't three. So because quarterback is the most important position.
Yep.
This is an offensive driven league. And the fact that Shanahan has turned guys like Nick Mullins, who is a practice squad guy now, by the way, into
Yep.
a passable starting quarterback.
Yep.
Brock Purdy, who is a
Mr.
literal
Irrelevant.
irrelevant player in the
Yep.
NFL draft landscape,
Who
into
will be a practice squad guy
yeah,
next year.
into a good looking quarterback, at least for 3 weeks in the short term. And then Jimmy G, who we all think, has obvious limitations, fine quarterback, but, incredibly efficient when he's running the offense. That's just what Kyle Shanahan does. He's fantastic. Their system is great. He's a great play caller, great play designer. They have a ton of weapons. I don't want to take away from what Purdy has done, because I went back and watched the film, because Purdy was a guy, I watched in the worst quarterback class I've ever seen in my time doing these evaluations. I watched like 20 quarterbacks last year. Brock Purdy was not one of them, because I've seen him enough live to know that he wasn't an NFL quarterback, or at least I thought. He has proved me wrong so far. So the fact that this is happening is kind of bizarre, but I don't want to just completely dismiss how good he's been in moments. I went back and watched the game from 2 weeks ago. He made a couple plays that Jimmy G just, in my opinion, can't and won't make. So I do want to give him credit for that, but I also will acknowledge that, I've seen Shanahan do this, with a bunch of guys. So
he's made Jimmy G the bag 3 times already. Like the bag. Somebody's going to pay him again next offseason just because of this. I think it's hilarious. I don't respond to any of these people ever. I don't ever respond to anybody whose take is so outrageous. I'm just like, okay, we're done here. Just like I've been getting a lot of Mason Rudolph guys out here past 3 days of just like, Mason Rudolph's the man. He should be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm like, I'm glad that you think that. I have not thought that the whole time. I will say it's been fun to talk to Mason Rudolph twice in 1 week, a guy who I know for a fact has heard some of the takes I've had on him, and we both know they have not been good takes. And I've just been sitting right in front of him like, hey man, how you feeling this week? Those are some nice shoes. And you know the banter, what goes back and forth where you're just like, I know you hate me. I know we're not on good terms here. I think those are it. I think those are the 2 headlines I've seen this week. The rest of it's just been Antonio Brown and who's going to start at quarterback and who's not going to start and why it doesn't really matter. But all right, let's talk other side of the football. I want to dive into Carolina's offense. Sam Darnold, Chuba Hubbard, Deontay Foreman, DJ Moore, names, not huge names outside of DJ Moore, but definitely ones we need to address on top of an injury for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But first, we got a word from our boys over at True Classics. The holidays are almost here, and there is plenty of t-shirt cheer thanks to our sponsor, True Classic Tees. Fellas, we have the perfect gift for your wish list. True Classic Tees are a gift for you, for her, and a great present for any guy in your life. True Classic is on a mission to maximize men's confidence by making them look good. Trust me when I say that this is a gift that the ladies will appreciate too. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men look great in their tees, and now you can save big while doing so too. Get 25% off at True Classic with our exclusive link, trueclassic.com/allsteelers. And the discount doesn't stop there. You'll save even more during their site-wide sale. Support our show and check them out at trueclassic.com/allsteelers. If you're rocking a Santa bod, True Classic has the Christmas miracle you've been waiting for. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on certain body types. Well, True Classic's team designed t-shirts to make the fellas of all sizes feel confident in their clothing. These tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's a desirable look that can be achieved by any body type. They give you the wide shoulder and tapered bottom look that we're all looking for, and the quality of the t-shirts are elite. From going to the gym to the first date, there's no better look than a fresh tee. They offer other menswear as well, ranging from polos to workout shirts to even boxer briefs designed to keep your boys feeling nice and comfortable. They make it super easy to build out your wardrobe with their elite True Classic quality. also offer a pack builder on their website where you can customize and bundle what you want and save even more. And for the big fellas out there, they have long options for the tall guys and up to 3XL for defensive size players. True Classics also makes the perfect gift or stocking stuffer for all men in your life. Dad bod, got you covered. Rip bods, you know it. Your average Joe, yes, sir. Get yourself or someone you love the number one gift on Santa's list. It's a gift for you, but really a gift for her. Get 25% off at trueclassic.com/allsteelers. Free shipping is included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at trueclassic.com/allsteelers. Santa won't be the only one slaying thanks to True Classics. All right, let's talk other side of the football here. I won't lie to you. Until you mentioned the name Deontay Foreman 25 minutes ago, totally forgot that guy existed. Picked up Chuba Hubbard on my fantasy team this week. Very disappointed after you said it because I've actually been considering starting him. Looks like that's not the move. When you look at the offense they've been running, it's been running back by committee, led by Foreman. Hubbard's been in there. I think they tossed a rookie out there last week who had a pretty good game, if I'm not mistaken. That seems to be how they operate most of the time, is on the ground. It seems like a very consistent offense. What do you see from these guys? You're muted.
Dang, ain't that embarrassing? No, I mean, it's kind of a lot of the same conversations we had last week when we were doing the pod and we were breaking down the Ravens. Less quarterback mobility in terms of like Darnold versus Huntley, but this is a team, they want to run the football. They are a downhill power team that really wants to just pound the hell out of the rock.
Yep.
And that's what Foreman does best, man. Like if you look at the Panthers offense since he got inserted into the starting lineup, they're, top 5 in rushing EPA. They're top 10 in rushing success rate. Foreman's 5th or 4th in the entire NFL among running backs and yards after contact. Really? This is who they are. They, you just look at some of the, like we talked about before we jumped on, just some of the volume that he's seen just in recent weeks. They want to give him 25 carries. So like if the game goes how Carolina wants it to go on Sunday, Foreman will have 25 carries. Hubbard will probably have like 7 to 8 carries, and they'll run the ball close to 40 times on the Steelers defense, which, a couple weeks ago we were talking about, the Steelers run defense has been this like miraculous turnaround from last year where it was, the worst it's been in franchise history. And then you look at what they've done the past 2 weeks, which has led up, close to 400 yards on the ground. So it's definitely cause for concern just because, how the two teams are playing. One team's playing really well running the ball and another team's playing really poorly in terms of stopping the run. So it's definitely some cause for concern, for the Steelers defense.
Do you look back at the game last week? So my initial reaction to last week's inability to stop the run was too much Cam Hayward moving around. Stop moving him around so much. Need a true nose tackle more than anything in this world. Do the Pittsburgh Steelers need a true nose tackle? Not like a Montrevious Adams. He's great for the pass rush, but you need like somebody who could just sit there and not move anybody and shut down completely the middle of the field. You also need a very physical inside linebacker, and the Steelers do not have any of those. I thought even Robert Spillane disappointed me when it comes to his run defense the last couple of weeks. What was your takeaway? Am I right there? Am I wrong there? Well, why were they so bad?
You're right. The Ravens didn't do very much mystical stuff.
No, it was straightforward running the football.
Yeah, it's really just ground and pound, put it, down your throat type stuff. And that's just, in my opinion, and the Steelers have lost like that to Baltimore a couple times. Last Sunday sort of reminded me a lot of that last game of the season in 2019 when the Steelers lost to the Ravens with RG3 at quarterback, when the Ravens ran the ball like 50 times down their throat in a game that, didn't really have much playoff. Like the Steelers needed a miracle to make the playoffs or whatever at that point, I think. So, but yeah, I think that's the worst way to lose. in terms of like from a fan perspective, from a team perspective. It's just demoralizing knowing that like, you know, a team just dominates you physically like that. And I thought the Ravens, you know, credit to them. This was my overwhelming takeaway after the game was that, you know, they came into Pittsburgh's crib and kind of just punked them out. And that's really what it was. We can break down all the X's and O's and all that other stuff, but like guys weren't getting off blocks. Baltimore was a lot more physical. Keep in mind that Baltimore's run offense is impressive, but they didn't have Kevin Zeiler. They didn't have Lamar Jackson. So,
no.
And J.K. Dobbins was literally, I mean, you could look at J.K. Dobbins and he looked about 70%. So,
dude, 70% and was activated 45 minutes before the game. Like,
I mean, it was a bad showing, man. I mean, there's not much to be said more than that. I think the thing that I'm most intrigued by moving forward, last week, I thought Isaiah Loudermilk and his really limited play looked horrible. He looked like a dude who hasn't played this year. He was getting moved around off the block easily, and that was not good because now Chris Wormley's out, which is going to be more playing time for him. TA did say that they're going to give DeMarvin Leal some more playing time at 3-tech, which I don't know why they're still playing him at edge. The usage of him since he returned back from his injury has been sort of bizarre to me.
That's a good question. I want to ask that. Why do you think they tried to bring in Ola? Do you think it was because they need to get rid of Malik Reed, or what do you think was going on there?
Reed might not be healthy. I know he had a back issue.
He had a back injury, but he's practiced all week. Like 2 weeks now, he's been full participant.
I mean, who knows? I mean, Jameer Jones has played a little bit. He has done really nothing either. So, I mean, that could have just been a swap at the end of the depth chart type thing. But, you know, Leal's a guy who I mentioned this on Twitter that there's a very real possibility that, I mean, the Steelers are going to have a new starting nose tackle next year. That is 100% a need in the offseason. They're going to have a new starting nose tackle. But I think there's like a really legit conversation that we're probably looking at a new defensive end too, starting wise.
Oh, you have to.
Leal hasn't played that position really at all this season, like very limited snaps this season. And even when he has, like he's been relatively quiet, which is, you know, expected for a rookie 3rd round pick. But then, you know, Ogunjobi, that signing really has not worked out at all.
No, shout out Ogunjobi. He gave me a cookie today from Last Crumble in LA. Thing smells delicious. I've been waiting to eat it all day. We were going to do it on the show, but I feel like I don't want to eat in front of everybody after we started recording. I took that decision back.
No, I mean, and Ogunjobi's done some things, but he's been really inconsistent in my opinion. And that's been, you know, kind of a theme throughout like the defensive front, in my opinion, all year. Wormley, season-ending injury. Who knows what he's a free agent next year. Who knows like what his rehab's going to look like, what his timeline's going to look like. You can't bring him back on that. Yeah, I mean, you look at, you know, a lot of guys. Tyson Alualu, you're going to lose him. Montravius Adams on a 1-year deal. There is a lot of question marks on this defensive line heading into next year. The Steelers have not been able to generate anything resembling a pass rush all season long. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered over these next 4 weeks. Like, which of these guys is even going to be around next year? And what this defense could potentially look like when the season opens, you know, next September.
Let me toss a name out there. How do you feel about a return of Javon Hargrave?
I'm about it. I mean, I mentioned that earlier this season in terms of like, you know, he's having a great year in Philly. Hargrave's been a good player. Not the traditional kind of 2-gapping nose tackle that I think a lot of people really want, but you know, in terms of adding legit pass rushing juice, that's something that they desperately need. So
not a run stuffer though.
Hargrave's okay. He's more of
what do you do to fix the run stuff? Who you approaching here? Like, do you have a name?
The number one thing that they can do is go get an ass kicker at inside linebacker.
They don't even remember inside linebacker exists. Okay, they just every year they're just like, oh yeah, these guys.
Get guys that can actually get off of blocks and can stack and shed guys that get to the second level. It's because it's one of the two things. Like, you're either going to invest in guys up front who are capable of holding blocks and keeping their faster inside linebackers free, or you go get some linebackers that can actually stack and shed and play more downhill like that. And either way I don't really care. It's more of a philosophy thing on what your coach wants, what your scheme dictates.
Yeah.
But what the Steelers are doing right now is they've got guys up front who don't hold blocks. They don't get off of
No.
blocks. So then the inside linebackers are, having, guys get to the second level on them, and that's not their strength. I mean, Devin Bush has never been able to do that dating back to his college
No.
days. Miles Jackson never been that type of player.
Nope.
I think that Spillane's physicality kind of sometimes gets like a little bit overrated in terms of his ability.
You stuffed Derrick Henry at the
too.
goal line one time, and this guy's the greatest run stuffer of all time. Like, yeah, sometimes he's good, sometimes he's.
I mean, he's
not
probably
good.
he's probably the most physical out of those three. But like,
Yeah, but what does that
what
say?
bar are we saying? What bar are we setting here?
Yeah,
That's the
it's
question.
very low.
So,
do you think that Mark Robinson gets an opportunity this week? Miles Jack's doubtful. Doubt he plays. This dude's limping around. This dude's limp is worse than Mark Kaboli's. And if you guys have seen Mark Kaboli in the last year, the guy could barely move. So no, it's bad. I don't expect him to play.
That's a good question. I wouldn't hate that. I would. Robinson's a guy who's a little bit more of a limited athlete, but he'll hit you.
Yeah, but he's
so
a thumper.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe more of a downhill type of guy. So we'll see. I'm interested to see. I would assume that he's going to get a hat since Jack's probably not going to play.
Yeah. Whenever you get interviewed, he got interviewed today. I think I'm putting that on YouTube tomorrow. That you're playing if you're getting interviewed. TV cameras don't show up for nobodies most of the time. Yeah, I agree with you though. I think that you need a lot of people talk defensive line. I think they obviously need to restack the defensive line, but we've been saying that for a whole year now that their defensive line situation is a lot worse than it looks. You got to go get an inside linebacker. It's been too long of putting off finding a replacement for anybody on the inside. And you thought it was Devin Bush. You knew clear as day that it wasn't Devin Bush after his injury, and you still kind of pushed that one off. And now it's, you've hit the point where next year you're not going to have any. Come the offseason, you got to get rid of Jack. His contract's way too high. Spillane and Bush are both free agents. Maybe you resign Spillane. Bush definitely doesn't want to be here. I mean, if you bring back Jack on a lesser deal, maybe, but you're right now looking at 0 inside linebackers outside of Marcus Allen, Mark Robinson. Not ideal.
And Allen's on a 1-year deal too. I mean,
yeah,
you
so
expect
Mark
him to be
Robinson
back to the special teams, but no, I'll be honest with y'all. We're not trying to do too much forward thinking in terms of roster construction, but I don't think the Steelers going into next year with 4 or 5 new starters is necessarily a bad thing.
No, I think it's needed.
I mean,
I know
I know that people get on me all the time on Twitter because I have higher expectations for this defense than the majority of you guys do, but the Steelers defense really hasn't been good this year. I mean, obviously the offense is worse and it's a plague most of the time. But in order for, what the money and the allocation of assets that they've invested into that side of the ball, it's not been good enough. And that's why I think next year, seeing 4 to 5 new starters, generally I lean on the side of camaraderie and chemistry, but I just don't think that this current group that they've got right now is good enough to play the style of football that Mike Tomlin wants to play, which is win games on defense, which is hard as heck to do in this landscape of the NFL. So if you're wanting to win games like that and ball control, run the ball, take care of the ball, win low scoring games, you better go get a lot better players on defense than what they've got right now. And I think that that's pretty easy to see, at least from my perspective.
Or you trade your head coach to the Panthers. Easy win right there. All right, let's get back to football here. Current football, not future football. Although I am very excited. We got 4 more weeks before we could just dive so heavily into what needs to be replaced for the Steelers. Let's answer Anthony's question before we get into picks. Matchups to be excited for. We didn't talk about this last week, which I think I was a little upset about because you usually got good ones. You have not mentioned DJ Moore at all this show yet. Why?
So it's really funny because Carolina, I think, is trying to turn Sam Darnold into this game manager. Since he took over, I mean, it's just like I said, their offense is really RPO heavy as it is, but they're running a bunch of design bootlegs. They're really trying to limit his exposure because Darnold has a tendency to just be a chaos quarterback and turn the ball over all the time and take a bunch of sacks, and they're trying not to do that. So But it's funny because DJ Moore is definitely the most talented. Like if you're just looking at talent, he's the most talented player on the Carolina offense. But he didn't even have a catch last week. I mean, and that's like if you look at his stats over the course of the year, he has like 3 games with less than 10 receiving yards. He has a couple more with like 20 yards, and then he has a couple 100-yard games. So it's like feast or famine all year.
Oh my gosh, it really does.
It is worth noting that there has not been a team in the NFL that's been worse against opposing teams' wide receiver ones than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So maybe this is a feast game for him. But that's something to watch for, just because Moore is a guy that, you know, it could be like a make or break type of thing. With
it also goes the other way around though. Like he put up his 200-yard games are against Patrick Surtain and AJ Terrell. So maybe,
I mean,
you know,
Moore's a
maybe
talented player. He's probably in that tier with like where you would put, you know, a Deontay Johnson, kind of in that like third tier worth of receivers.
But maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe that's it. Like maybe he's just really good against like New Orleans, which I guess at the time Marshawn Lattimore would have played, but 2 yards, 1 reception, 2 yards, nothing against Seattle. Who's stopping you in Seattle? You know, well, what's his name? There's the rookie that's having a really good year. Yeah. But besides that, I mean, like you're putting up big 100-yard games against Patrick Surtain. Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe Cam Sutton's the perfect juice for this guy. Perfect. Or Levi Wallace, who, you know, if he's either going to, he's either going to have an interception or he's going to give up 150 yards. It's one or the other. All right. Well, so you look at that matchup, probably play both of them. Who else are you looking at when it comes to these matchups to watch?
Just in terms of the Steelers, I mean, like I already talked about Burns, the tackles are going to have to win that matchup. Burns is the one player on their defensive front that can wreck the game. So you can't let him do that. So that's the number one matchup. I do think that if Pat plays, there are some things to be had, maybe with getting him matched up on the Carolina safeties.
Pat's playing. Pat's cleared to go.
Yeah, I think that's going to be depending on how much he plays. You know, he only played about half the snaps last week, but that's definitely something to watch for too. I think Pat could have a reasonably good day. I would try to avoid going at J.C. Horn a ton. So I would probably try to focus more on maybe feeding the ball to Pat or whoever's on the other side, opposite Horn.
Do you think that Chooks has the ability to stop Burns? I don't believe that Dan Moore does.
Chooks has a good feel for getting out of his stance really quickly. He has excellent timing in terms of like snap anticipation. Like he can get off the ball, and that's what Burns does really well. The only thing that I do worry is like Chooks likes that jump set, and Burns is a little bit dangerous to jump set because if you do that, depending on what your right guard's responsibility in pass pro is, you're out there in one-on-one, and that's a lot of space for him to work with inside, and that's the scary part of him. So Chooks can do it. I don't think that they're going to shut him down because Burns has been, like I said, on a heater. He had 2 weeks ago against Denver. He had 8 pressures.
Jeez.
And then I think last week he had 4 or 6. So I mean, he's playing really well. So you know, it's just limiting his impact. For sure. I'm interested to see. I like what I've seen from J.C. Horn. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter, I talk a lot of cornerback stuff. That's my favorite position to break down. So I've really enjoyed watching Horn this week on film, and I'm interested to see how he matches up with Deontay and Pickens for sure.
Yeah. All right. I'm about that. I would love to see. I want Pickens to go up against every challenging cornerback from really here on out. I would love to see what he's actually capable of doing, because I don't think there's anybody. I mean, Marlon Humphrey had to tweet out an apology last week and then slid in there.
Man,
they
were cooking him. That was bad.
Cooking bad.
You don't see that. You don't see that very often from like. I mean, cornerback is a really volatile position, not just year to year, but week to week. But at the same time, you don't see many like cornerback ones like top tier kind of guys have weeks like Marlon Humphrey did last year. I mean, Pickens was just cooking him. I mean, Deontay too. It was really bad. I mean, I think there was a couple throws that if they were a little bit better, you know, Humphrey would have given up, you know, close to like 125 yards probably in coverage. Oh, yeah. That was wild.
Bad, dude. Bad. Never thought especially him and the Pittsburgh Steelers and what he's done in recent years. It was just shocking. But I would love to see JC Horn on Pickens. I'd love to see that matchup. Unless, it interrupts my George Pickens over bet that hits every single week. Every single week. Unless he gets 0 yards. Then, that's a different story. All right.
I noticed my guy's not in here, man. I gave that free play last week on Pickens, and he's not in here to give me any credit for winning him some money. I forget what our guy's name is.
What was your play on Pickens? I don't remember your play on Pickens.
He asked me if he should take the over on Pickens. I told him
Dude,
that,
you always take the over on Pickens. It's the easiest. There are 2 bets that are guaranteed almost every single week in the NFL. It is Pickens over whatever 40 number that they pick. And Justin Fields, I don't care if they give him 110 rushing yards, you go over, and chances are it's going to hit.
The funny thing is I got to take a victory lap because I don't gamble. But he asked me about if he should take Pickens over his receiving yards, and I told him that Baltimore had given up the 4th most completions over 20 yards down the field. I was like, he didn't get a ton of love last week. I anticipate that they're going to go his way, and then he catches multiple deep balls as soon as Mitch comes in the game. It's funny.
His over-under was 41.5 yards. First pass, 42 yards. 42-yard completion.
You feel really good about that.
It felt great. Let me tell you, it felt fantastic.
Oh, my guy's in here. It's Richard.
Oh, there it is.
Sir, Pickens over. I hadn't seen him in the chat, but I'm glad you won, brother. I wasn't gonna bring it up if I lost you money, but since I won you money, I was definitely gonna go with it. But there was a question in here. I think Canada's playbook changes opens up with Rudolph's arm strength. What do you mean by that? Because do y'all think that Mason has a strong arm?
I think that some people push that. Like, Jim Wexell, who I definitely respect, pushes that very heavy that he's got the best deep ball on the team. I don't know. Maybe he does, but he's checked down Mason. So it's, he's not going to use it. It doesn't change much, in my opinion.
I've never considered Mason's arm to be anything more than like average for like NFL level.
Yeah, I think people live off of the air raid Oklahoma State offense years and kind of just, he's got a deep ball. I don't know, maybe a little bit.
I mean, Mason doesn't throw. I mean, he throws a pretty deep ball. He hasn't been very effective as a deep ball thrower in the league, though.
But that's what I mean.
Like, arm strength too. Like, I think there's also we talked about this a little bit on the pod a couple weeks ago when talking about quarterbacks on the draft pod. Arm strength isn't really about how far you can throw it. It's kind of the windows that you can hit and the things that you can do with your arm in terms of space. So I've never been really impressed with Mason in that regard, but I don't know how much the playbook changes. I think the big thing is, Mason's going to want to play more from the pocket. He's a lot more predictable in that manner whereas like Mitch is kind of a little bit more chaos. So we'll see.
Chaos is a good word. It's a good word. All right, let's get into picks first. We'll give our boy, I'll take this one. So I think that I want to say that I don't think Deontay's comments were a hit at Mitch Trubisky. I think it was more of just I'm rooting for Mason. I think they've always kind of been close. But yes, I would definitely, I don't know. I wouldn't even touch it. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, the Deontay over under yardage, because there's half of me that says that Mitch is going to make sure he gets the ball so that he doesn't hate him. And then there's the other half of me that's like, Mitch isn't even going to look his way. And Deontay is going to go 40% max to make sure that Mitch doesn't look his way. So I would just, stick with what we know. What we know is Pickens. Every time, Pickens. Except for, never mind. Maybe not, because Mitch didn't throw to Pickens either much. Except for last week. Go Pickens. Always Pickens. Kenny Pickett has not been cleared to play. He's doubtful for Sunday. As of right now, it's looking like Mitch Trubisky is going to be the starter. Mason Rudolph backup. They haven't decided it yet, but that's what the rumbles say. That's what the grapevine has been saying. All right, let's get into picks. I'm done saying it's my favorite time of the week because we lose every single time, and it's a little disheartening at this point. Carolina Panthers 3-point favorites at home, 37.5 over under. I think that, usually I come on here and say that's the easiest over to take all year. I'm giving up. I'm thinking this week, maybe a 14-7 game, and I'd feel real good about it. I'm hammering the under.
Oh man. I have debated. I really got on this podcast today and I still didn't know the answer on what I was going to use for my picks. And I usually give it some thought on like, all right, usually my film study will allow me to have some vibe on like, hey, do I think they're going to win this week or not? This week I have no clue.
Nice.
I do have an interesting stat that I tweeted yesterday that makes me want to lean Carolina, even if I still don't think Carolina is very good.
No.
Um,
They've
the
won what? 3 in
Steelers
a row though?
are, huh?
They've won what though? 2 in a row. 2 in a row.
Yeah, I mean they're back. They're technically like only like a game out of the playoffs because the NFC South is so horrible. But the Steelers are 0-5 this year when allowing more than 20 points in a game. The Panthers have scored more than 20 points in 6 of their last 7.
Good.
So
Good.
I don't know. That
Good.
tells me to probably lean towards Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, they've also like they beat Seattle 30-24. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
23
And I know
to 10.
Seattle's kind of on the downhill trajectory. But man,
So is Denver. Yeah, these wins aren't that impressive. Atlanta 25-4-15. Not impressive. Then you lose 3-13 in Carolina or at Baltimore.
To Baltimore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I truthfully, I don't even know, guys. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess
it's just like, yeah, whatever,
only
man. It's just
because
gonna be a game.
it's a Steelers pod, and I want to feel some sort of optimism in terms of Sunday. I'm gonna say that they're gonna win. I guess.
I guess.
Give me Steelers.
I've never seen somebody so just does not believe what they are saying right now as much as I'm watching you say this.
Give me Steelers 20-16. I think I really do. Part of me, honestly, the one reason that I feel good about the Steelers this week is Sam Darnold hasn't turned the ball over the past 2 weeks. I don't think that is 1,000,000,000% ready to change. I mean, Darnold, I don't know how many. I would be interested to see how many times in his career he has went 3 weeks without a turnover. So, I'm anticipating that changing this weekend.
All right, so 20-16 Steelers. I mean, yikes. This is if people weren't putting the whole this is a game Mike Tomlin would lose, this is a game the Steelers lose notion out there, I would believe that this is a game that the Steelers lose, because I just look at it like Carolina is the team that they're gonna, it's just so boring that they're gonna lose this one. But the fact that people are putting out there means that they still believe that the Steelers are a good football team right now. I don't think that they fit that bill these days. Not saying that they don't have the potential, but I don't think this is a game that they would typically lose. 2016 is a good number. There's 0 chance the Pittsburgh Steelers score 20 points in a game, Derek. 0 chance.
I'm only saying 20 because I really do feel like a Darnold pick 6 is on the way. I really do. I don't know why. I just feel like he's
that could be their only touchdown of the game. A pick 6.
That's okay. That's okay. The offense could get me 13. I'm really, really cool with 13, man.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna say the Steelers win. I'm gonna keep it with the same. But I'm going under. But they're not scoring 20 points. So I'm gonna hedge you here, and I'm going 19-16. 19-16 Steelers. There is no way they are scoring 20 points. I've watched the Steelers every single week. Last week felt like a 45-point game. Like it was like, oh man, this is actually like not a terrible offensive game. And then you look at the scoreboard, you're like, this is the worst offensive game ever. What do you, J.K. Dobbins rushes for 300 yards and they score 16 points? No, they don't score 20 points. It's not what happens. 19-16 Steelers. They keep it alive. Let the roller coaster continue. Keep those. Do you know what the playoff thing is? Do you know what the playoff?
As of right now, they have like a 0.02 chance.
No, it was 0.2 as of yesterday. 0.2%. But like, who needs to lose? Do you know who needs to lose?
Everybody. I think I did the 538. I did the 538 model earlier in the week, and it was like I just put it in if the Steelers win out. If the Steelers win out without anything else happening, they only have about a 6 to 7% chance of making the playoffs. So they need a historic amount of help at this point.
Hey, I don't
Really,
know
all
if
they're fighting
538
for.
was around back then, but remember the Buffalo year? Remember the Buffalo Jets year? I
Yeah.
know you remember that. That
Yeah,
should have
I
never
do.
happened in a million years, but that's the Steelers magic
We'll
right there.
see. Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. I think that they keep it alive this week. You say that they keep it alive, although don't watch the YouTube video if you want to stay optimistic about Derek's pick there, because his facial expressions are not going to do you justice. All right, everybody, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Find us anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find mine and Derek's work on allsteelers.com. Enjoy the game this week. Remember, George Pickens over is always a hit. We'll see you Monday. Peace.